What I'd like you to share is that moment that finally hit you, that you knew this was the path you needed to take, because I know this was not an easy thing to do.
This was, I lost my husband a little under 5 years ago. He passed away, and I wasn't working. He left me with a lot of life insurance, but that's just a bank account. And when you're making a huge mortgage payment, that's going to go away. Hadn't worked in a long time. I had a 15-year-old son who was extremely angry. He was devastated by the loss of his father. And I felt like staying home with him was the best thing to do for him. So I did. But eventually it became abundantly clear that the bank account was going to run out. And the job market is not easy. And I felt pretty desperate one day when I was just looking at my situation financially and thinking, in less than a year, if I continue on this path, I will be penniless.
Wow.
My stepsister had just sold her house, a short sale in another area, and she said, you have to stop making your house payment. If you don't stop making your house payment, they will not talk to you. And that was just the scariest thought. I could not imagine not making my house payment. My credit was good, and I was just not willing to give that up. I took out the yellow pages and I started looking for real estate agents, because I knew I couldn't do it without one. I'd had to have somebody who knew the market, knew the process. It's an emotional process. Not a good idea to do it yourself. It became really clear to me when I was talking to you on the phone that day that I called you, and I explained my situation to you, and how you described it was so perfect that the light went on. You said, well, gosh, you're just basically bleeding money. Well, yeah, truly I was just bleeding money. I made my decision that day to stop making the payment. I think I had stopped making the payment by the time I talked to you. But it was hard. And when you came and listed my house, I breathed a sigh of relief. Because really, I truly was scared. I was scared. I was scared that within a year I would be penniless and my son would be on the street and we'd be living in my car.
Right, you go to the worst scenario.
Really, I was projecting all of this out. I felt like a failure. I really did. My husband was an extraordinarily responsible individual. And there I was, losing everything that we had done. But I got past it by remembering that I did what I felt was right for myself, for my son. But the situation had changed, times had changed, things had changed that I had no control over. The market, for example. Like I said, if I'd sold it when my husband died, I would have made money, and here I was walking away with nothing.
Right.
But I had to consider that those things I had no control over were not my responsibility.
Nice.
And I had to do what was best for myself. And at that point, I needed to cut my losses and move on.
The number one factor I've noticed is the judgment people put on themselves. Oh my God, what will my family say? What will my friends say?
I actually decided that I really didn't care what they thought. They weren't the ones who were going to be on the street or living in their car. It was me. And only I knew what was in my bank account. And it wasn't going to sustain me doing what I was doing. It wasn't my failure. It was just what it was.
Would it be fair to say that you quit judging yourself about it?
I did. I had to. The only thing that I did have control over was taking care of that particular moment in time, selling the house. The hardest part with the short sale process is that the seller is not happy about it. I wasn't happy. I didn't want to sell my house. I loved my house.
Right.
This was my dream house. This was like, remember when you first got a car, you had an old clunker?
Right.
And when you got your very first brand new shiny car, that was my house. It was my brand new first shiny house. And I had to get rid of it. And I loved it. But it also symbolized my family. My husband and I were there. That was the last thing we had together. It's extremely emotional. Your home is it's your lifeline. It's like letting go of the rope in a tug of war. You want to hold on, you want to hold on, you want to hold on, but you got to let go, or you're gonna go down.
Yeah.
When I wrote that hardship letter, I was very specific with the bank. I said to them, "This is my situation. I have only a bank account. I have no job. I have not made my payment. I will not make my payment. I do not want a loan modification."
Right. You were very clear that
I was
that
very
staying was
clear
not an option
that
anymore.
this is what I want. And I had already, I did speak to my accountant who advised me to walk. I told him my situation. He knows my financial situation, and his advice was walk away. Just walk. I didn't feel good about doing that. I really didn't feel good about just walking away.
Right.
But I took the advice of my stepsister. I did stop making the payment, and when I wrote that hardship letter, I was very specific. I am not going to be making my payment. I have no choice but to do a short sale. I would rather go through with the short sale process, and I have a buyer. And at that point, we had a buyer so quick on my house. I was so fortunate that I hadn't even written the hardship letter yet. So in my hardship letter, I basically said, I have obtained a buyer who's qualified and willing to wait for this process. So, but I'm not going to make my payment, and I'm not going to do a loan modification. So, please, don't lose this buyer, because I'll walk if you don't. Pretty much.
Right.
I mean, I basically served them an ultimatum, but that was the way I was going to handle it. I was either going to do a short sale or walk away. The loan modification wasn't an option.
How was the escrow process when you were going with us? I mean, how did you like the way the team handled things?
The team handled things really well, extraordinarily well, because, like I said, that buyer was in my face, and they were nice people. They're very nice people, and they loved my house, but they were in my face, and they were making me crazy. And there were a couple of times when their agent actually called me herself, wanting to know if they could come and measure and do this or do that. And I called you one day, and I was on the ceiling, and you talked me down. I was really irate. And your team, it was amazing how you could back me down, calm me down, and put me back into a place of some serenity.
Good.
It was handled really well, because you knew the process so well that you could sort of take my emotions out of it and bring me back to the business part of it. That was important, because you need to remember it's business, and that's what you and your team were able to do for me. It was kind of like, you were like a counselor as well as a realtor. You have to take the emotion out of it and remember it's a business transaction.